Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Atlanta, we need to talk. Because behind the closed doors of Flowery Branch, something explosive is brewing, and it is going to decide whether this Falcons team soars into the playoffs or crashes right back down to earth. 3 positions, 3 fierce, no-holds-barred battles. And by the time training camp wraps up, at least one veteran, maybe more, could be sitting on the bench wondering what just happened. Grab your popcorn, Dirty Bird Nation, because we are breaking down the drama, the stakes, and the players who could either become household names or cautionary tales by September. This is the story of the fight for the Atlanta Falcons roster, and trust us, it is juicier than anything you have seen this offseason. Let's start with the biggest, loudest, most impossible-to-ignore storyline in the entire NFL right now. The quarterback controversy that refuses to die. Michael Penix Jr. versus Tua Tagovailoa. 2 left-handed gunslingers, 2 very different Ursums, and 1 job up for grabs. If you thought this competition was settled, think again, because insiders are saying it is anything but a done deal. Here is the situation. On paper, you would think Penix, Atlanta's former first-round investment, would have this locked up. He is younger, he is the guy the front office bet its future on, and fans have been dreaming about him taking over ever since draft night. But dig a little deeper and the picture gets messy fast. Penix was already dealing with rust and inconsistency before his injury derailed things further, and here is the kicker: he was noticeably absent from a chunk of this offseason's mini-camps and OTAs. In the cutthroat world of professional football, that is not a small detail. That is a giant red flag. When a quarterback is not on the field building chemistry with new coordinators and receivers during the spring, it raises real questions about whether he will be ready to seize the job when the pads finally come on in late July. Meanwhile, Tua Tagovailoa is quietly building a case that nobody expected. Yes, his last season was arguably the roughest stretch of his career, and yes, the turnovers piled up in a way that made fans wince. But zoom out and you will find a player who has proven at his best that he can operate at an elite level. Remember 2023? Before the concussions completely knocked his campaign off the rails, Tua was putting up video game numbers. He was near the top of the league in completion percentage. He was leading in passing yards. He was leading in yards per attempt, and he was tops in passing touchdowns. That version of Tua is exactly the type of surgical, rhythm-based passer that new play caller Kevin Stefanski has built his entire coaching philosophy around. And that right there might be the secret twist nobody is talking about enough. Stefanski does not need a quarterback with a cannon arm and highlight reel athleticism. He needs a quarterback who is accurate, who plays within structure, who does not force bad decisions outside the system. Since 2024, guess who owns the highest completion percentage in the entire NFL? Tua. The next closest name on that list is Jared Goff, a quarterback who has thrived enormously in a scheme-driven, rhythm and timing passing attack. Sound familiar? If Stefanski wants his blueprint replicated in Atlanta, Tua might be the closest thing to a plug-and-play fit sitting right there on the roster. Of course, nothing about this quarterback battle is simple, and that is exactly what makes it so entertaining to watch unfold. Tua's turnover numbers last season were genuinely alarming, trailing only the infamous struggles of Geno Smith in that department. That old, unwanted nickname from his rookie years threatened to resurface. But here is where the story gets interesting. We have seen quarterbacks get bounced from one situation, land somewhere new, and completely transform under the right coaching staff and the right supporting cast. It happened with Sam Darnold, revived under a brilliant offensive mind after his career looked completely stalled. Nobody is promising Tua turns into a Super Bowl hero overnight, but the ingredients are eerily similar. a fresh system, a quality play caller, and weapons. Oh, the weapons. Atlanta's skill position group is loaded, arguably featuring one of the best players in all of football at the center of it. So who wins the job? All signs right now are pointing toward Tua Tagovailoa strutting out of that tunnel as QB1 in Week 1. Penix's absence from off-season work combined with his uneven play before injury has many close to the situation convinced this competition may not even be that close when the pads come on. But do not let anyone tell you this story is finished. Training camp has a way of flipping scripts overnight, and if Michael Penix shows up looking sharp, looking healthy, and looking every bit like the first-round talent Atlanta drafted him to be, this quarterback race could blow back open in an instant. Keep your eyes locked on Flowery Branch because this soap opera is far from its finale. But hold on to your seats, because the quarterback room is not the only place where chaos is brewing. Over on defense, there is a secondary shakeup happening that could completely reshape how this Falcons team lines up on Sundays, and it all traces back to one gut-wrenching moment from last November. Billy Bowman. If that name sends a shiver down your spine, you remember exactly why. Bowman was absolutely electric to start his rookie campaign, showcasing closing speed that made him look like a human missile in coverage. Then, in the blink of an eye, disaster struck, an Achilles tear. Just like that, one of the most exciting young pieces of this Atlanta defense was gone for the year, and now the entire franchise is holding its breath waiting to see who he comes back as. Here is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. Achilles injuries do not just heal on a calendar. The average recovery window sits somewhere between 9 and 12 months, but even players who technically clear that timeline often admit they were not fully themselves for that first season back. It is not just physical, it is mental. Every cut, every burst, every sudden change of direction becomes a moment of hesitation, a split second of can I really trust this leg? That hesitation can be the difference between a game-changing pick six and a costly blown coverage. So what does Atlanta do? They cannot just throw Bowman back into the fire and hope for the best. That would be reckless, and frankly, it would be an insult to how special this young talent looked before the injury. Instead, the smart move, the move that insiders believe the coaching staff is already leaning toward, is easing him back in. That means someone else needs to step up at that crucial nickel cornerback spot, at least for the beginning of the season. Enter Aviante Terrell. His twitchy, do-it-all skill set makes him a natural fit to slide inside and hold down that nickel roll while Bowman rehabs at his own pace. But that decision creates a domino effect, because if Terrell moves inside, that leaves a vacancy on the outside. And the name currently in line to fill that gap is Mike Hughes, a veteran whose numbers last year were, to put it gently, underwhelming. Not exactly a confidence-inspiring situation for a defense trying to take a leap forward. But here is the twist that makes this whole storyline must-watch television heading into camp. This is not meant to be a permanent arrangement. The expectation, the hope, the whisper campaign echoing through Falcons circles is that this is a temporary fix. Maybe by October, maybe sooner if Bowman's recovery goes smoothly, he slides back into that nickel role that made him must-see TV as a rookie. When that happens, Terrell does not need to go back to the bench. If he proves himself capable on the outside during his time there, he could simply stay put, permanently bumping Mike Hughes down the depth chart entirely. Suddenly, you have a defensive backfield that looks completely different by midseason than it does on opening day, all triggered by one torn Achilles and the chain reaction that followed. This is exactly the kind of subplot that could define whether Atlanta's defense takes a real step forward or continues to be its own worst enemy. And just when you thought the drama was over, we have not even gotten to the linebacker room yet, where a former Houston Texans castoff is quietly plotting one of the great redemption stories of the upcoming season. Divine Diablo is locked in as the unquestioned starter, the green dot wearing signal caller of this entire defense. That part is not up for debate. The real intrigue is who lines up next to him, and all signs point to a name Atlanta fans might not know as well as they should: Christian Harris. Harris himself has been refreshingly honest about how brutal last season was for him. No sugarcoating, no spin, just an admission that things did not go the way he wanted in Houston. Flashback to 2024, and you will find the culprit, a calf injury that wiped out over a dozen games and completely derailed the momentum he had built after a genuinely electrifying start to his career. Before that setback, Harris looked like one of the most promising, fastest-rising young linebackers anywhere in the NFC. But injuries have a cruel way of stealing opportunity, and by the time last season rolled around, his role had shrunk dramatically behind one of the most dominant defenses in the entire league. So why should Falcons fans be excited about a guy who just had a rough go of it? Because the tape from before the injuries tells a completely different story. Back in 2023, Harris was a walking stat sheet. Over 100 tackles on the season, 7 tackles for loss, 7 pass breakups. A former third-round pick who tested off the charts athletically, running all fours across the board at the combine, the kind of speed and range that makes defensive coordinators drool. That is the player Atlanta is betting can resurface now that he has a clean slate, a new city, and, crucially, a defense that desperately needs exactly what he brings to the table. And here is the connection that should really get your attention. Last season, when Divine Diablo went down and this defense needed someone to step into the void left behind, the coaching staff turned to Caden Ellis. And Ellis was so vital to that unit's success that it reportedly took more than a single player to even attempt replacing his production. Now compare Ellis's best season directly to Harris's best season, side by side. The numbers are shockingly similar. Ellis edges him out with a handful more tackles, a few more tackles for loss, an extra half sack, but we are talking about a gap of maybe 10 to 15% in production, not some massive canyon separating a franchise cornerstone from a fringe roster piece. If Christian Harris can rediscover even 85 to 90% of that 2023 form, Atlanta may have quietly found its next impact linebacker without anyone outside the building noticing. Layer on top of that the fact that Atlanta has been stockpiling young talent all over this linebacker room. Names like Kendall Daniels and Harold Perkins have already been added to the mix, and Channing Tindall is now in the fold as well, even if his primary value right now leans towards special teams. Troy Anderson is also still sitting in the wings. What you are looking at is a coaching staff clearly building a linebacker unit around speed, versatility, and depth, a committee approach designed to overwhelm opposing offenses with fresh legs and varied skill sets rather than leaning on a single dominant name. Whether Christian Harris can pick up right where his 2023 tape left off remains the single biggest swing factor for how far this defense can climb. So there you have it, Falcons faithful. 3 separate battles, 3 completely different storylines, and 1 franchise standing at a genuine crossroads as training camp approaches. Will Tua Tagovailoa seize the quarterback job and finally rediscover the form that once made him one of the most efficient passers in football? Will Michael Penix's absence from the offseason program come back to haunt him, or will he show up in pads and flip this entire competition on its head? Can Billy Bowman make it back from a devastating Achilles injury without rushing the process? And will Aviante Terrell prove capable enough on the outside to permanently push a veteran out of the picture? And will Christian Harris finally escape the shadow of back-to-back injury-riddled seasons and reclaim the electric form that once made him one of the most exciting young linebackers in the entire NFC? Every single one of these questions gets answered in the next few weeks. And that is exactly why you cannot afford to look away right now. Training camp battles like these do not just decide depth charts, they decide seasons. They decide whether Atlanta finally breaks through or whether we are right back here in 12 months asking the same painful questions all over again. So here is what we need from you. If this breakdown got you fired up, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you this kind of in-depth Falcons coverage every single week. Drop a comment down below and let us know which battle you are most locked in on. Are you Team Tua? Are you still holding out hope for Penix? Do you think Billy Bowman comes back better than ever? Or are you nervous about rushing him? And most importantly, make sure you are subscribed and have that notification bell turned on. Because as training camp opens up and these battles start playing out in real time, we are going to be right here breaking down every single practice rep, every depth chart shakeup, and every twist along the way. This is going to be one wild ride into the 2026 season, Dirty Bird Nation, and trust us, you do not want to miss a single second of it. Rise up, Atlanta. See you in the next one.